We are live. How you doing?
Good evening.
Well, good evening to you, my darling.
Hey guys, good evening. On this day number, yeah, I stopped counting.
Yeah, same. I don't know what. I think I know we're left with 11 days. I think we're on day number 10 now.
Oh, so we've done pretty well.
No, we have. We've done good. I think.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. Alright, so we're just gonna wait a little bit until we have people coming through to watch. And yeah, we can share a little bit. So how's been your shutdown?
Mine.
Lockdown. Yeah, how's been your lockdown?
Mine has been quite hectic. Yeah.
Also.
I've a lot of schoolwork to get through. And I was trying to push and make sure that my I fully utilize my 21 days so that when we get back, I'm in a better place in terms of my assignments and my dissertation and all that. So it's I feel like I've put it to good use. And I think when it's all done, when people shall be saying we are well rested, I shall be saying I need rest. So yeah, that has been mine. Yeah. So in as much as it wasn't planned, I feel like I've put it to good use. It's done good for me and for my schoolwork.
No,
so,
you've done well. You've done quite well. You have done quite well, sweetheart. Alright, cool. So, we are back like Musana. That was supposed to be a joke.
I'm sorry, that just went.
Alright, cool. So, we're back, Mr. and Mrs. And thank you so much for joining us. So, yeah, tonight we are talking about handling conflict in shutdown, when you're locked down. Because one of the biggest things that you can have when you're this close, in such close proximity, when you're spending 24 hours a day, 7 days a week together, conflicts just kick up just like that.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to have very small things, little molehills just become mountains when you're crammed up like this. And we've had our fair share of conflicts.
I mean, you can fight over the remote. You can fight over what are we eating. You can fight over anything because you are in each other's space. So it's easy to get into conflict in such a time as this, and especially also because it's like I think for most people it's like a shock to the system, because we have not had an opportunity where we have just had idle time, like 24 hours. I wish I had actually calculated into hours.
How many,
But we haven't actually had that opportunity to just have 21 days of, just you and I. So I think for most people it's a shock to the system. I'm sure you start off wondering, okay, so what do we do? What do we talk about? And the things like that. But it's been so it's easy to get into conflict because it's where you'd say, you know what, right now I feel like I'm getting a bit crammed up, I'm just going to take a walk, or I'm just going to go see friends, or whatever the case. Right now there's no opportunity for that. So whether you're feeling annoyed or whether you're feeling crammed up, you still remain in that same space.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's been, I think for most people it's a different thing altogether. It's something new.
Yeah.
But I think we've done good. So far so good. so we're talking about handling conflict.
Yeah, so tonight we're talking about handling conflict when you're under lockdown. Hey Barbs, good to have you with us.
Oh, hey Barbara.
Yeah. All right, fantastic. So we're going to talk about maybe 6 things, right? 6 areas that you can improve on when it comes to handling conflict, especially in this lockdown. So these lockdown lives are really pretty much trying to address what marriage looks like in a lockdown. So conflict. Tonight we're talking conflict. So next time, I think the next time we're coming back, we'll be talking about having deep conversations, because this is another opportunity for people to really connect and intimate with each other in terms of conversation. So tonight we're talking conflict, handling conflict in a shutdown. So the first thing, so they're not in
any particular
order.
Yeah.
But these are just things that you can just pick up on in the heat of the moment. Whenever you're in a conflict with your spouse, these are some of the things that you just need to check or tick on to make sure that these things are in order. These are not the only ones. This list is not exhaustive. You can definitely come up with your own. But these are some of the things that we have put together that we thought, you know what, when it comes to handling conflict, they work. So the first thing is, whenever there's a conflict or whenever you're about to bring up an issue or a complaint, ease into it, right? Ease into it. The issue, no matter how big it is, no matter how hectic it is, the way that you introduce an issue has a huge bearing on how you eventually resolve it, right? So when you,
So how do you feel when I say, babe, we need to talk?
Yeah, see, that's intense. Already I begin to feel the shivers, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what have I done now?
And you start thinking back.
Exactly.
Was it this? Was it that?
Yeah.
And if it was that, what's my comeback
to
it? You already put up your defensive wall whenever. But then I guess it depends on each person, on each couple. But I know for certain the moment that I hear, can we talk? We need to talk.
Yeah.
It's like, what now? What have I done?
Mm-hmm. So don't be too intense, right? Just ease into it. Don't put too much pressure. Because at the end of the day, what you want is not who is wrong or who is right. What you want is an issue to be resolved. And so how you get into it and how you introduce it really has a big effect on, or has a big bearing on whether you end up resolving it amicably or not. So ease into it, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So don't don't create a threatening environment or an intimidating
hostile environment
where you are thinking, when you introduce the topic to your spouse, already they are calculating their moves, already they are thinking, how do I need to protect myself? Because as human beings, naturally we have that instinct to want to protect ourselves, even from our own spouses. So you're already calculating, so if it's this issue, so how am I going to guard myself or to protect myself, of which you don't want that at the end of the day. What you want is to be able to get across the message and to deal with whatever issue is there between the two of you. Right. So make sure that you create an environment that is conducive for real talk.
Yeah. Great. So we move on to the next one. Hey Zivi, good for you to join us. So the next one is don't push, right? So don't push. In other words, don't blame. When you bring an issue and you blame, see, it's human instinct. I think in one of the videos that we did the whole lifting hand up and pushing and whatnot. So it's human instinct that whenever you are blamed for something, your first response is to either fight or flight. It's human response. I mean, we've learned that science or nature, I don't know. But we've learned that human response, whenever there's that threat, you either fight or you flight. So when you're being blamed for something, whether you are rightfully being blamed, or whether you are being blamed, without a cause, the fact of the matter is that you either fight or you flight. So when you are presenting an issue, or when you are in the heat of the moment, don't blame your spouse. So for example, when you, like the common one for most women, right? It's like, you are the one who said you'd do it, but you didn't. You're so irresponsible.
Yeah, you know how irritating it is to tell someone that, you know what, baby, there's a problem with the tap, or the sink is blocked, or, the tap is leaking, or whatever the case is, the door needs to be fixed. And they say, okay, I'm going to get to it. And then it never gets done, I can already feel my emotions start to rise just at the thought of it, because it's annoying, it's upsetting. But at the end of the day, what you want is to get that door fixed. And by blaming and saying you are the one who said you were going to get it fixed is not going to help. So you need to be tactful in the way that you put it across and you present it, so that at the end of the day, we achieve the goal. And the goal is to get the door fixed. The goal is to get that tap fixed.
So how about, sweetheart, we agreed that you would get this done. Is there anything that I can do to help facilitate this? Is there anything I can do to help you to do this? Right.
Yeah, so the thing is, it's not going to come easy, because the moment that you're upset, you want to vent, you really want to, strangle someone. You're upset, you want this done, and they didn't do it. And sometimes you actually feel like you are being betrayed because you promised that you're going to do something and you didn't do it. So genuinely, those emotions are there. We're not saying ignore them. We're saying channel that energy in a way that is constructive.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, what we want is results.
Yeah.
So you attacking this person is not going to give you results. So it takes practice. Just for you to bite your tongue the moment that you want to say something, it takes practice. I know there are times where I've actually said to him, thank God for the Holy Spirit, because I have something that was bubbling to come out, but it just then remains on the tip of my tongue. But you experience it, you want to share something, but practice it, and keep the goal before you, and the goal is that you want to get something done.
So don't push. That's number 2. Don't push. In other words, don't blame. Rather, just find a way of coming in there very gently. Okay. So the third thing is I works better than you. What does that mean? Right. So when we say I works better than you, when you take the issue to you, you appropriate it to yourself, right? What you're saying is you're taking responsibility for the misunderstanding, right? So for a good example would be when you start with I, it makes you take responsibility. So a good example for that would be say for example, it's a money issue, right? You are so reckless. How can you be so reckless with money? We said that we're going to do this with the money, and you end up doing the other thing with it. How can you be so reckless? You're so irresponsible. What's the point of having a budget when you can't even stick to it? So it's you. So how many yous did you hear in there? So many of those yous. So when you say you're putting your spouse in a corner, and they'll put up the defensive walls. And once someone has put up their defensive walls up, there's nothing that you can do.
Yeah, and the issue is now about me. Yeah. So it's no longer about the budget, it's now me. And so there's now a fight because you've said something about me. And sometimes we feel like when you say sometimes it feels like you've already judged me and you're not giving me room to explain myself. You're not giving me room to be proven that I'm actually innocent. But if you start off with maybe I've got a better explanation as to why it didn't go that way. But the moment that you say it means you have made your conclusions that this is the way that I am, and I'm reckless, and there's no room for me to put across my side of the story. So if you say
So, sweetheart, I thought we had agreed that we were going to use this money for school fees. Right? So what you're saying is, that's what I thought. I thought we had agreed that we're going to use this money for school fees. I may be wrong. I may have misunderstood our position, but I thought it gives your spouse an opportunity to share their side of the understanding equation.
Yeah,
so
because then in that case I can then say, oh, okay, but I then thought we later said the brakes for the car need to be changed. So I thought, we needed to do that first. So you're creating an opportunity to discuss the issue. Whereas if you had just come out right and said, you are reckless, the issue is not about the money anymore. It's about my character that you've attacked and you've called me reckless. So it ceases to be about the money and dealing with this issue. It's now personal.
So I works better than you. When you're in a conflict, try as much as you can to use I personalize, bring it to you, own the responsibility for the understanding or for the misunderstanding, and that way it gives your spouse the room to be able to explain themselves, or the room to be able to show you their perspective. And who knows, maybe in their perspective you then think about it and you're like, okay, what you're actually saying makes sense, so there's no need for us to be fighting about this. What we just simply need is to clarify things better. We've got a budget, let's stick to the budget, so depending on whatever situation, whatever conflict, whatever thing that is bringing in the conflict in the home. So I works better than you. Okay? That's what we mean when we say that. So the fourth thing, right? The fourth thing is let some pressure out. So let out some pressure. In the heat of the moment, this is very difficult, right? It's very hard. But what what Ivy said in at the beginning, the most important thing there is not about who is right or who is wrong. The most important thing is you want the conflict to be resolved. If it's an issue that the door is not fixed, what you want is the door to be fixed. If it's an issue of something that hasn't been done, what you want is for that thing to be done. So you've got to let out some pressure. Sometimes when you in an argument or in a conflict and it gets so heated, our pastor always says that when there's high emotion, there's low clarity of thought. So when the emotions are so high and the emotions are welling up, normally the clarity of thought goes down. High emotions, low thinking. And so you end up then, in regions and sections and pieces where you shouldn't be in at all. Yeah. So when you ease the pressure, when you let out the pressure, what you're doing is you're removing, you're lowering the emotions, right? You're lowering the emotional energy that is being used in that conversation, right? So one of the things that we do, for example, is when we're talking about something and I've said something or she says something that I then didn't do, and then we hear it somewhere else,
So I give an idea and I say, okay, I think for this situation, we need to do it this way. And then for some reason, maybe he doesn't take it and doesn't implement it. And then, eventually he gets around to doing it. So just to, instead of fighting about that, to say, but didn't I say it? Because usually people fight about, husband and wife fight about the fact that, the husband doesn't want to take the suggestions from the wife. So in that instance, when he then implements, instead of, having my emotions rise up and say, but I had told you that, and why didn't you do it in the first place? Just to take off the steam, we'll just laugh it off and say, so you wanted TD Jakes first to say it so you could take it, or something like that. Think of little jokes that you can throw in there, just to
de-escalate the tension, right? So to de-escalate the fight. So like she's saying, so okay, so you wanted TD Jakes to say it first. So now I normally say, so you wanted to hear it from Joyce Meyer first before you do it. So it's just bringing that little thing in there. Because it's our thing, right? It's our thing that when you throw it in there, no matter how angry you are, and no matter how upset you are, no matter how welled up you are with emotions, the moment that little thing is thrown in there, it eases the pressure. And more often than not, we actually end up just bursting out laughing.
And the thing is, the moment that he says it, it registers in my mind that, okay, he's trying to communicate that calm down. Yes. We are not getting into a fighting zone. Yeah. So calm down. Yeah. We just want to discuss this issue and move on. So you can, as a couple, you're unique. You can think of, little inside jokes that you can use to ease off the pressure. And that will help you in times of conflict where you can see that this issue is escalating and it's really not necessary for you to be going in those regions.
And so what it is really, it's like an emergency exit panel. And the good thing about it is that, like she's saying, it really does show you. So whoever throws it in there first, it's like it makes you mindful that, oh, right, okay, I think we've gone too far. Or it makes you mindful that, okay, she's so angry now, and so the best thing to do is to just ease off a little bit of pressure. You kick in that emergency panel, and all of a sudden, it comes down. So like one of the things that I say is whenever we're having an argument, I like to say, you know what, you better thank God that He gave you an understanding husband who is slow to anger and slow to speak. And all of a sudden, it brings the tensions down. Yeah. It really cuts everything down. So it's very important to us. So okay, I'm gonna read a couple of comments that came through. Hopefully, we will be able to do that. Okay, let me read from here. So that's Rumbiza Iviki. Rumbiza Iviki says, humor definitely works wonders for me too. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Chieza, thank you so much for watching. Humor does work. So you better employ that and use that. It works, right? So the next one is...
Be nice.
Be nice.
Be nice. Right. It doesn't matter how upset you are. Be nice. Try as much as you can to be nice because, just because you're upset about an issue of the tap, I keep going back to the tap as an example, but just because you're upset...
Are you trying to hint something here? Okay, let's go. You better thank God that God gave you an understanding.
So just because you're upset about a tap issue doesn't mean that you have room or you have the license to be mean to your spouse. Because, when you say certain words, you can never take them back. Yeah. And because your spouse is your spouse is supposed to be your number one fan. He's supposed to be your number one, he or she is supposed to be your number one fan. So the moment that, words such as you're stupid or words such as don't be silly or that's nonsense, the moment that they come out of them, it's more painful than to just hear it from any other random person, because this is a person that you're supposed to have a connection with. This is the person that you would call my personal person. So if your personal being is saying such things to you, it really hits hard. So be careful of the words that you say whenever you are in a heated argument. Don't be mean.
Yeah, just because you're upset doesn't mean that you have to be mean. Don't fight dirty. Because honestly, when you do fight dirty, most times the issue then ends up not becoming the issue that you were fighting, but actually the way that you're responding to each other. That then becomes the big issue. And then sometimes you actually find that it's actually harder to deal with how you are engaging in the conflict than it is to deal with the actual issue itself. So rather than that, be mindful of that. Don't be mean. Just still remain respectful and remain, with a pleasant attitude, even in the midst of a conflict. And when we were writing some of these things, I remember I was just asking you, you know what? People will be tempted to actually ask, is this really practical when you think about it? That in an argument and you are really upset and he has done you wrong or she has done you wrong, and you say to me, don't be mean. It's going to be very difficult. But the fact of the matter is that the reason why we're together is because we want to be together and we want this marriage to work. So we will do whatever it takes, even things that when you look at it at face value may not seem practical. The fact of the matter is that if it works, let's employ it and let's see if it actually does work in our conflict resolution.
And it doesn't come overnight, like we keep saying, it doesn't come overnight. It takes you, if you were in that place where whenever you had a fight, you became very mean, it takes you making the decision to say, you know what, I'm not going to go in that route. And from this day forth, I'm going to engage in a better way of addressing our issues. It takes practice. It takes practice you actually biting your tongue and not saying some of these things, because you constantly then hear people after the whole fiasco then saying, you know what, I'm sorry, I didn't mean those things. So, but why did you say them? Because they are words and they stick. So even if you say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean them, it's words that I'll constantly remember, that my spouse said I'm stupid, my spouse said I'm all sorts of these mean words. So try as much as you can to stay clear of mean words. Just agree as a couple that we don't fight dirty.
True. All right, so the last one, the sixth and last. So tonight we're talking about handling conflict in a lockdown. So the last one that we're going to be talking about is delete the thread. Okay, so delete the thread. So when we say delete the thread, what we're saying is every argument or every conflict that we have is a thread, right? And so every time that we are done with it, we need to delete that thread, that we are done. The unfortunate thing is, a lot of times the temptation is there that when we have another disagreement and we open up another thread, we end up bringing the previous thread or a thread from 3 weeks ago, and we import it into this current argument, and we start using that as ammunition or as a weapon or as a shield or as defense or whatever. And so that then becomes another issue altogether, where we're now, we're talking about this, but now you're bringing up things that happened that I said sorry about, and I thought we'd resolved it
moved on.
3 weeks ago. I thought we'd moved on. So when you said it's okay, did you mean it or did you not mean it? So if you didn't mean it, what else didn't you mean? So what else? If you were convinced me that you're over it and you're okay, and now you're bringing it up again. So does that mean that you are actually, what else are you lying to me about? If you can lie to me about things like that.
And the conversation becomes very confused because you are touching on things that happened there and then things that are happening now. So clear off your chat history, if we can call it that. Clear it off and start on a fresh page. Whenever you have an argument, deal with the current argument and not bring the previous one, because if we deal with the backlog, it's going to be very difficult and very confusing for us to manage what we are talking about currently.
And not to say, because see, the thing is also, we are also going to be very mindful, also being mindful about repeated offenses, right? A repeat offender. Not to say that if a person repeats an action or something that they've done and you're constantly telling them not to do that and they're constantly repeating it, not to say that you shouldn't bring those things. I think there's another way of handling it. When it comes to that level, that's another different conversation altogether. It's a different way of handling that conflict altogether. But here, right now, we're assuming that this is a fresh thread, right? It's a fresh thread that you've just picked up on, and you want to deal with that issue there and then. don't bring up other threads, no matter how related they are to this current one. Delete the threads and deal with this issue as an isolated incident, unless, of course, it is very related and it directly impacts, or it's directly connected to the previous thing that they did, and it's a repeated offense. That way, there's another way of dealing with it, altogether, which sometimes may actually then involve, depending on how hectic it is and how bad it is, depending on the magnitude of that repeating that offense, you may actually then need to bring in third parties like a counselor or your pastor or somebody who can then help you see sense. Maybe sometimes it may actually then be an addiction or things like that. Those are things that are separate that you may need a third party to come in and help you to deal with. But as far as isolated incidents, delete the thread. It's important that you delete the thread, right?
All right, so we've just gone through 6 points on how to handle conflict during this lockdown. We've had so many, instances and scenarios that people that are just bringing across of, getting into conflict during this time. Because like we said initially, I think this is a shock to the system for most people, because you probably have never actually had this much time together before in your marriage. So this could be a shock to the system. Okay, so what do we do now? But even as the days are going, these are some of the things that you can begin to engage or begin to apply in your marriage, so that when situations arise, you know how to handle them better. And it also helps you to quickly deal with that situation, so that the rest of the days that you have on lockdown are not a nightmare.
So we spoke about, number one, ease into it. Don't be too intense when you introduce an issue. Don't do the whole, unless it works for you, but babe, we need to talk. Yeah. That's unless that's your thing and you understand each other on that level, then fine. But if not, ease into it. Find better ways of creating an environment that is conducive enough for you to be able to bring up issues. That's number one. So number two, don't push, don't blame, don't push your spouse. When you push your spouse, one of two responses will happen. They'll either fight you or they'll flight. They'll run away. So you don't want any of those responses. None of those ones are good. So don't apportion blame. Rather, find a way of bringing up the issue without blaming anybody, without blaming your spouse.
And number three is I works better than you. And what that means is, instead of saying you have done this or you do this or you didn't do that, it's I to take the responsibility, so that you create room for your spouse to even, explain away what actually happened. But the moment that you say they get into defensive mode. The moment that you say they get into a defensive mode, because you is an attack on them as a person.
And then the fourth one was that let out some pressure. In other words, bring in what are called recovery attempts. So let out some pressure when the argument or the conflict escalates. Throw in certain things there, emergency kick-out panels. So you work them out amongst yourselves. What works for you? We have our own emergency kick-out panels that when she throws that one in, I know, okay, we need to de-escalate. We need to calm down, because we're no longer solving the issue and now at each other and not at the issue. So figure out what works for you guys, whatever in-house joke or whatever in-house thing that if you throw it in there, your spouse knows, okay, they're not necessarily throwing in the towel to say that I give up, but they're just simply saying, okay, let's calm down, let's chill, and let's de-escalate a little bit. Okay, so throw in depressurize, so let out a bit of pressure. Okay.
And then that was number 4. And then number 5 is be nice. Don't be mean to your spouse. Be nice. There are certain words that should never come out of your mouth when you are addressing your spouse. Because words always have a way of cropping up, even when they are when they are on their own and they're thinking of you, or just thinking back, those words have a way of just cropping up or coming up again. No matter how much you say I'm sorry, words stick. So be nice, don't be mean.
And then the last one, number 6, delete the thread or clear the chat history, as you nicely put it. Clear the chat history, delete the thread. Don't bring in issues that you've already dealt with in the past and bring them in the current situation that you're facing. When you say we're good, I'm sorry, or I'm okay, we're good, I'm over it, be over it. Don't bring that in into the next argument. And also, I think maybe just another quick one on that one. Don't bottle things down, right? Because the moment you try and bring them up, it's an explosion. So sometimes the reason why people keep the thread is because the issue is not yet done. They are not finished.
It's not solved.
Yet. It's not solved. And so when someone says I'm sorry and you just say okay, fine, without you actually meaning it and without you actually having to be at peace with it and to be okay with it, trust me, it's going to come up again in the next issue that you face. It might not be now, it may not be the very next one, it might not be 2 from now, 3 down, but whenever it will come up and it will not be good. So what you want to do is whenever you have an issue, make sure that you are done with it, you deal with it and it's finished, so that you don't sense the temptation to want to bring it into the next argument. Yeah. So I think those are the 6 pointers that we had for tonight about handling conflicts. So thank you so much for coming through. So the next thing that we're going to have is we're going to be talking about having deep conversations, right? Because in this lockdown, it's very easy to have superficial conversations. It's very easy to talk about the kids. It's very easy to talk about the weather. Yeah. It's very easy to talk about. And then you actually find that we have nothing to talk about. We really don't have any deep conversations that we're having as husband and wife. So we want to talk a little bit about that, about how can we help each other have deep conversations so that we are happy and so that we connect. We connect at a more intimate level over a superficial level. So thank you so much for joining us, Babs, again, Zivi. Thank you for joining us, Tafads Wasandati. Hey, Sharon, Pastor Sharon. Thank you for joining us, Tendai Ngoshi. Biting my tongue. yeah, biting the tongue. Fungai, Perpetual Denga. Hey, Mrs. Kanyemba, thank you very much for joining us. Wungai, hey, Wungai, thank you for joining us. Anzana Wungai, yeah, for sure. It's a shock to the system. It is a shock to the system. Rumbi, we read that. Humor definitely works for me. Tapio Mukori, thank you for joining us. Precious, Bezaid Not, thank you. Yes, delete the thread, clear the chat history. Thank you for joining us. Cheers, Adiro. Hey, cheers. Thank you for joining us. Okay, cool. So, guys, Mufaro, hi. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, looking forward to the next one. Catherine, thank you for joining us. Cool. So, we are done for this one. We'll be back again. We'll let you know when. Probably the day after tomorrow, right?
Yes.
2 nights from now. So, come back with that where we're talking about having deep conversations. So, thank you so much. And good night and God bless. And remember,
keep on loving.
Keep on loving.
Keep on loving.
Bye-bye.